Hi, I'm Cliff, and this is my garage, and I made a big mistake. Hey, welcome back to the garage. And if this is your first time joining me, thanks for dropping by. So, I messed up. And I'm pointing here at the Carnewal exhaust, and the mistake was not buying the Carnewal exhaust. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with the Carnewal exhaust. If you go back to my latest review on it, as I said, it's a great exhaust. It's a nice sound. It's not as loud and obnoxious as I wanted my car eventually to be. And so I eventually swapped it out for a Soul Performance exhaust. But in the process of testing and evaluating the Soul exhaust, I found that I had made a rather large mistake in terms of my review of the Carnival. And it all has to do with the fact that I don't own or have access to a dynamometer. So one thing that I'm really curious about, and this kind of one of the major points of Project 987.2, is that I want to know, well, what kind of effect in terms of performance are all of these mods having? Um, are they worth it? I mean, some of these mods make some kind of outrageous claims in terms of the amount of horsepower they give you. Anyhow, so since I don't have access to a dynamometer, I decided to go at it backwards and just measure the 0 to 60 performance before and after each mod. And by taking that information, I felt I could work backwards through a mathematical model and determine approximately how much horsepower gain had come from that mod. And that's what I did with the Carnival exhaust. However, in evaluating the Soul exhaust, I found a couple of problems. One is that I did my 0 to 60 performance testing using the Sport Plus mode with my PDK transmission on my Porsche Cayman S. And when I was doing the Carnival exhaust, I was getting a lot of variability in terms of the 0 to 60 times. They would stay relatively consistent in a certain range, but then there'd be these few of them that really kind of skewed the results and they just weren't consistent with the other information. And I just kind of brushed it off at the time as well. That's just kind of the way things go. Well, when I was doing the evaluation on the Soul exhaust, I really began to pay more attention to it because I began to see the same patterns. And I realized that the issue, not the problem, but the issue was just the way the PDK transmission engages. Sometimes it engages and pulls strongly immediately. Other times it takes it just a split second more. The car will start moving, and then the PDK transmission seems like catch hold and starts accelerating. The bottom line effect that it was having was that there were some runs that had just a weirdly high time, because this I could see easily was adding 1 or 2 tenths of a second onto the 0 to 60 time. So one part of my fix for this is to now use launch control when doing these tests. Launch control in my testing has proven to be far more consistent in terms of uh, getting the car accelerating quickly. It also produces much lower 0 to 60 times, but the big thing I'm after is the consistency. So from now on, we'll be using launch control. The other issue I discovered was that I had discounted the effects of relative humidity and barometric pressure. And in doing more research, I discovered that they have a far greater effect than I had thought they did. So I went back and I rebuilt the model to account for barometric pressure and for relative humidity. And luckily, I had that information on the days that I had done the testing before. Also, looking at the 0 to 60 times, I took the oddly high numbers where I believe the PDK transmission didn't engage as efficiently as it could, and I tossed that out. So I cleaned up the data, I altered the model, and I reran my test calculations. And what I discovered was instead of a 6 horsepower increase from switching to the Carnewal exhaust compared to the stock was producing exactly zero point zero extra horsepower, which is not a surprise. Keep in mind, the Carnewal exhaust is just a modified version of the Porsche stock exhaust. And the Porsche stock exhaust is already a pretty well engineered exhaust. Now, on the old 987.1s, there was a set of catalytic converters in the quote catback portion, the rear portion in the exhaust. And so Carnival taking those out, there would be a pretty dramatic, not dramatic, there would be a performance gain. Any catback exhaust will get a performance gain because none of them had catalytic converters in them. Now, in the case of the 987.2, the second generation of the 987, they eliminated that secondary set of cats. And so really the modifications that the Carnewal can still do to the exhaust are really purely related to the sound it produces, which is a very pleasant sound. The Carnewal exhaust is not useless in that it just because it doesn't produce any more horsepower. The exhaust note that it produces is dramatically different and very, very nice. So I'm not going to sit here and say that this is bad and that it's not worth the money. It is very much worth the money just for the change in the exhaust note. It sounds so much better. It does not sound as good as the valved Soul catback exhaust, but you have to remember that the Soul exhaust, partly because it's valved and partly because it's a whole new exhaust. It's not just a modified one. It costs like 3 times as much. So bottom line, I just wanted to let you guys know that I had made a mistake. The Carnewal exhaust does not produce 6 horsepower. It produces no extra horsepower. Your gain in terms of installing the Carnewal exhaust is purely that it sounds really, really good. Now, before you go down there, smash that like button, feed that YouTube algorithm. It helps me so much in terms of growing the channel. And while you're down there, if you're not one of my almost 3,500 subscribers, please go ahead and click on that subscribe button. It doesn't cost a thing. It doesn't hurt a bit, I promise. But it also feeds that YouTube algorithm and helps me grow the channel. And finally, if you want to keep up with everything I'm doing, including some further modifications to the exhaust on the Cayman and everything else to do with Project 987.2 and all the other things that I'm doing around the garage, go down there and click on that bell icon. What that does is that turns on notifications for this channel, and that way YouTube will use the little notification icon to let you know every time that I do something new from here in Cliff's Garage. I'll see you next time.